Alright, so yeah, good to be back. In today's video, we want to lock our pieces at the bottom. So when they reach the bottom, they should be locked and we should be able to generate a new piece. And so that's what we're going to do in this video. Right, so before we get into that, let me play and show you where we were. And so this is where we left off in our previous tutorial. So if I press the downward arrow key, you can see our piece just disappears and there is no more piece being generated. We need to randomly generate our pieces and also lock them when they get to the bottom. For us to do that, first up we need to import a module in Python. So this comes with the standard library. It's called the random module. But within that random module, we need a specific function which is called the choice function. So we can say from random import choice. Okay, so this is going to help us randomly pick our pieces. Right, so after we do that, the next thing we need to do is for our play surface, for us to be able to lock those pieces and show them on the game surface, we need some kind of a mapping to our play field. Okay, so I'm going to call that the play grid, play_grid. You can name it whatever you want. And I'm going to use a list comprehension. So we're going to map it with zeros. So we're going to say 0 for core. This is going to be for the columns. So for range, our cores, we have our cores already defined up here, which is 10 columns. And we also have 20 rows. And so we say for range, for column in range cores. And then this outer list, I'm going to say for row in range, obviously rows. All right, so what this does is going to create a mapping of zeros for our play field. Now here, this is where we're generating our pieces, right? So let me save this. Let me run this again. This is piece number 2 in our list here. So if I change that to piece 0, obviously we have a different piece. We have the O piece. And so we want to create, randomness here. So what we can do is, instead of calling it this way, then we can use the choice function here. So choice piece rect here. So because this is a function, so we use parentheses like this. So if I'm to run this, now you can see we are generating random pieces, but obviously when it gets to the bottom, it's not going to regenerate another one. But if I keep on closing it and running it, you see a different piece now. If I run it again, you see another different piece because they are now being generated randomly, right? So this is the behavior that we want, but we are not yet done. We want it to do it automatically. All right, so obviously we need to check the y-axis, right? When the piece hits the bottom, we need to do something. We need to lock it and then we give it a color. And so here on our y movement here, this is where we're going to define the algorithm. So just after the break statement, we're going to say elif if our shape, which is our shape I, dot y this time is greater than, because y is increasing as we move downwards. So we're saying if that y is greater than the rows minus 1, the same concept that we used up here for the x is what we are using down here. All right, and then we say O, then now we call this mapping that we created up here, which is our play grid. So we're going to say here play grid. Now we're using indexing, right? We are indexing. We have 4 squares that make up one piece, right? So we want to map those so that we can give them a color. So this is what we are doing here. So we're going to say shape here. This one, let me copy this and paste it in here. The shape I.y, also we want its x-axis, right? Obviously. So we're going to say shape square bracket I.x. And so what do we want to do? We want these to be in a specific color. Okay, so we're going to loop through again because we are looping through 4 squares which make up one piece. That's what we're going to implement here. So we're going to say for I in range 4 again, we want this play grid, play_grid, but this time we're going to use this old shape. When you hit the end, you need to use some kind of a copy like we did here. Old shape I dot the y-axis first and then shape i.x. After it hits that bottom, we want to lock it, so we're going to give it a color, and so we're going to say pygame.color. We're using this, so we're going to give it a color of blue for now. All right, after we do that, then we can, I'm going to copy all these three, Control C and Control V. Okay, so with this now, we're not going to deep copy the old shape. We're going to deep copy the choice pieces, because this is where we're going to generate a new piece. Okay, so down here, where was I? Here. Right, so we're going to say deep copy, choice, and then pieces rect. Okay, so this is where we're going to generate the new piece. So once we hit the bottom, this is what we're doing up here. We're going to change the color of that. We're going to give it a color, obviously. We're going to look at the old shape. Here I'm supposed to say old again. So old shape, and then we're going to give it some kind of a color, and then we spawn a new shape. Right, so this is a similar concept with this one, because we are deep copying these shapes. All right, so having done this, obviously it's not going to work for now, but I'm going to run it anyway so that you guys can actually see. All right, so if I run this, you can see if I press down there, you can see now we're generating new shapes, right? Random shapes, and they are going on top of one another, but we cannot see, obviously. The next thing we need to do is we need to draw those shapes that we lock at the bottom. Right, so to draw those shapes, I'm going to come down here. Okay, so we're going to use enumeration because we need to keep track of the number of rows and the number of columns. But of course, we need first to check the number of rows, right? That's the y-axis. So I'm going to say here for y, and then it's going to be row, right? This one, the I is for the row in enumerate now. If you're not sure how enumerate works, I have a video on enumerate. You can just go back on this series, check out my enumerate video, and you will understand how enumeration works. Right, so here we're going to enumerate display grid. So that's what we're going to enumerate. So here I'm going to say play underscore grid. Obviously, when you determine the rows, we also need to determine the columns, right, where the piece is. And so I'm going to call this a column in enumerate, and then we're going to call this R, the rows. Okay, so we're going to use that. And once we do that, then we're going to say if columns, if in that column, then we're going to assign the shape rect this value, and also the shape rect y this value. Okay, so I'll shape underscore rect x, this one. I'm just going to copy this, Control C, and I'm going to paste it, Control V down here. Let me type this in, and I'm going to remove this. Don't need shape I. We just need to assign these to the size of the square. After we do that, then we can draw that shape. So we can say pygame.draw.rect, and then we're going to draw it on the game screen, and the color is going to be assumed by this this C here. This is going to be the color, and the shape that we want to draw is this shape rect. So shape underscore rect is the shape that we want to draw. Right, so having done this, I think now we have everything working. So let me save and run. Let's check this out. Down here is there, down there you can see the shapes are just sitting on top of one another. Obviously the colors are changing because that's what we specified here. We specified the color blue, so I could change this to yellow and save and run again. Once you hit that bottom, the color is going to change to yellow, but you can see I can move this to that end, I can move this color to that end, and the moment it hits that or hits another piece on top, is going to change color. Right, so but yeah, so this is the functionality that we wanted. Obviously there is a whole lot that is going on. You can take your time to go through this and experiment and see what each line is actually doing. But yeah, that's the whole idea. Sometimes it's not so clear to understand what the code is actually doing, but check this and try and see what's happening exactly. So for now, let me just change this color to white. Then I'm going to keep it, as white. But of course, our game is not, we cannot rotate these pieces, right? Would want to be able to rotate these pieces, right? So this is where we are. We are able to generate our pieces. As you guys can see, they are being randomly generated. And that's what we've been looking at today. So I want to thank you for your time. I hope to see you in our next tutorial. For now, I'm out. Bye-bye.